special guest of honor, sir, you're welcome, sir. It's indeed, we're indeed delightful to have you in our midst, sir.
I'd like to welcome you to One in LML local government area of Rivers State, the venue for the International Maritime Conference 2022 put together by the Nigerian Navy in commemoration of its 66th anniversary. NTA Network Service is here to bring to your living rooms and offices the details of this transmission. On behalf of the outside broadcast crew, I'm Kingsley Amajiri. Welcome to One.
Thank you. The Chief of Defense Staff, service chiefs here present, the representative of the Inspector General of Police, former chiefs of the naval staffs and icons of the Navy here present, the National President of the Naval Officers' Wives Association, principal staff officers from Defense and Service Headquarters here present, General Officers Commanding, Flag Officers Commanding and Air Officers Commanding, Commandants and Commanders of Tri-Service Institutions, military formations and autonomous units here present, members of a diplomatic corps, senior military officers both serving and retired, members of the Naval Officers' Wives Association, our distinguished resource persons and delegates, heads of paramilitary and security agencies here present, captains of industries and corporate friends of the Nigerian Navy, our royal fathers, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I am Captain Abiodun Folonsho, the master of ceremony for today's event. Joining me to compare the event is Sub-Lieutenant Phoebe Koji Ibrahim. And it is indeed my singular honor and privilege to, on behalf of the Chief Host, the Chief of the Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Awa Zubair Gambo, warmly welcome all our distinguished invited guests to the One Port Multipurpose Center Auditorium venue for the International Maritime Conference. Over the next 2 days of the conference, erudite speakers and subject matter experts will address issues around the theme of the conference, which is optimizing collaboration for maritime security and socio-economic development in Africa. Permit me to inform this esteemed gathering that in addition to the conference, we have an exhibition hall, and we have our major partner, which is the Institute of Security Studies, who are partnering this conference with the Nigerian Navy. Our exhibition involves a public display of works and arts and items of interest by different companies and organizations from around the world. The essence of this is to provide a platform for these organizations to promote their activities. We will now listen to the safety brief before I will hand over the proceedings to the Chief of Policy and Plans, Naval Headquarters, to give the opening remarks. The safety brief, please.
A 3,000 square meter exhibition hall. In the bright hall, guests are welcomed by a modern lounge bar and a relaxation area. Security within the building obviously takes a vital role as the facility is equipped with the best technologies. For your convenience, restrooms are located within the lobby areas to the left and right wings and available for male, female, and the physically challenged, which is identified at the doorpost with the respective signs. These are all fitted with automated lighting and plumbing control system. If you discover a fire, activate the fire alarm at the manual call point using the red wall box, usually by the exit nearest to you, and shout, "Fire!" Then, make your way to the nearest exit leading to the muster point. There are 10 emergency exits in the auditorium, which can also be used as access ways. However, do watch out for emergency exits armed with annunciation systems and signage. These are only to be used only during emergency. And if you should hear a fire alarm, leave the building to the nearest fire exit. Do not panic or run. Do not use the lifts. Do not collect possessions. Do not try to fight the fire. Only do so if trained and if it is safe for you. Keep calm. Exit to the nearest muster point, located in a considerable safe section directly opposite the main entrance area of the auditorium and the exhibition hall, with a visible floor marking and signage. Look out for fire wardens within the building.
Our very important distinguished invited guests. Also, we have a medical stand to my right, and there's an ambulance outside in the case of a medical emergency. But our ushers are on hand, and we have officers scattered around the hall who can help us if we have any questions as regards exit plans or locating a convenience. It's on this note that I most respectfully invite the Chief of Policy and Plans, Rear Admiral S.S. Garba, to give the opening remarks. The Chief of Policy and Plans.
The special guest of honor, the President, Commander-in-Chief, Muhammadu Buhari, ably represented by the Honorable Minister of Defense, Major General Bashir Magashi, retired. Our Chief Host, the Executive Governor of Rivers State, the Chief of Defense Staff, other service chiefs, heads of navies and coast guards, our distinguished invited guests. May I stand on the already established protocol. On behalf of the Chief of the Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Awal Zubairu Gambo, Admiralty Medal, I warmly welcome you all to the Nigerian Navy 2022 International Maritime Conference. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this International Maritime Conference is expected to serve as a veritable platform for intellectual discourse aimed at proffering viable solutions to challenges that confront navies in Africa in pursuit of peace within the maritime environment and by extension, global peace. We are pleased to identify with captains of industry, manufacturers, and corporate organizations for the display of their products at our exhibition center. We invite you all to indulge in the products on display. Throughout history, nations that have developed have leveraged on the advantages offered by the sea to drive their trade and enhance their prosperity. The African continent, cognizant of this, has hinged Africa's growth potentials and wealth creation on the development of its blue economy as encapsulated in the Africa Integrated Maritime Strategy 2050. It is in this line that the theme for the International Maritime Conference 2022 was carefully articulated as, I quote, optimizing international collaboration for maritime security and sustainable socio-economic development in Africa, unquote. This conference therefore draws strength from our allied navies, as well as seeks to provide African navies the opportunity to deliberate on topical issues with a view to developing strategies that will enhance our collective preparedness towards meeting present, emerging, and future maritime challenges within the Gulf of Guinea and Africa. The presence of foreign chiefs of naval staff and heads of coast guards in Africa, allied friends of the Nigerian Navy and Africa, as well as eminent, retired, and serving senior officers and other accomplished scholars on maritime security gives credence to our motto, and in this, to the purpose of this gathering, which is onward together. We look forward to your valuable contributions, which I have no doubt will enrich our deliberations profoundly. To our distinguished invited guests, we call on you to please draw from your wealth of knowledge and rich experiences in enhancing the quality of deliberations to enrich the outcomes of this conference. It is believed that this discourse is timely, and the presentations will agitate our minds for robust discussions that will provide vibrant interactive sessions. The discourse is also expected to provide new, better, and reliable collective security architecture to mitigate the myriad of maritime security challenges in Africa. Pertinently, this year's Maritime Conference seeks to put flesh to many skeletal resolutions that have been passed on Africa's maritime security. Indeed, the Nigerian Navy, in collaboration with the Institute for Security Studies, under the auspices of the African Union, plans a meeting of African naval chiefs and other invited African maritime security officials and experts from international organizations to integrate and agree upon the modalities for fulfilling the requirements of the African Union Communique 1012, as well as the African Union Assembly Decision 755 and the 2050 AIM strategy. The initiative to bring all these important personalities to deliberate on Africa's future is spearheaded by our chief host for this occasion, the Nigerian Chief of the Naval Staff. Our special guest of honor, sir, Your Excellencies, senior officers, distinguished invited guests. It is my singular honor at this juncture to respectfully invite the Nigerian Chief of the Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Awal Zubairu Gambo, to deliver his welcome address. The Chief of the Naval Staff, sir.
Security challenges in the Gulf of Guinea and in the African continent at large. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the current security threats in the Gulf of Guinea is of serious concern to us all gathered here today, as well as the larger African and global community. What is perhaps more disturbing is that most of the criminal activities are directed at the economic life of both littoral and landlocked states. Typically, maritime threats within the Gulf of Guinea have become transnational and are evolving beyond the scope and combat capability of one nation. For most of the Gulf of Guinea navies and Coast Guard, one of the major implications of the emerging security situation is the increasing demand for effective collaboration in maritime policing. The present situation calls for greater international collaboration as well as interagency cooperation within states. Let me at this juncture acknowledge several past regional and continental levels of cooperation and collaboration towards integration of organic national capabilities of African states aimed at achieving holistic and sustainable maritime security architecture for the continent. Some of these initiatives include the Africa Integrated Maritime Security Strategy Aims 2050 and the Yaoundé Declaration of 2013, which established the Code of Conduct, Memorandum of Understanding and Protocols for Collective Maritime Security Initiative for member states of the Gulf of Guinea. These initiatives testify to the political level commitment to security and developmental imperatives in our maritime domain. Other initiatives in the recent past include the first and second offshore patrol vessels Africa 2013 and 2015 conferences respectively, maritime stakeholders and regional maritime awareness capability conferences of heads of navies and coast guards in the Gulf of Guinea with clearly defined communique and implementation guidelines. I must emphatically acknowledge the positive contributions of the international community of the Gulf of Guinea region. Regrettably, in the past decade, a huge capacity gap has emerged amongst Gulf of Guinea navies and coast guards in the efficient discharge of these mandates. It is envisaged that this conference will provide a veritable platform to collectively prefer way forward in addressing the myriad of challenges in the maritime environment. It is therefore hoped that this forum will facilitate the much needed distance towards identifying viable concepts and constructive collaborative action plans that will support this strategic level initiative. Hence, it is against this backdrop that the team optimizing collaboration for maritime security and socio-economic development in Africa was conceptualized. The objective of the conference, therefore, is to elicit proper understanding and develop strategies that will enhance collective preparedness to meet present and emerging maritime challenges in an ever-changing strategic environment in the Gulf of Guinea and beyond. Finally, I make bold to state that no single navy or coast guard can do it alone. It therefore urges all to be frank and sincere in our deliberations in providing solutions that are implementable in the immediate, short, medium, and long terms. Distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, let me acknowledge and appreciate once again distinguished personalities, organizations, and friends of the Nigerian Navy to have contributed in one way or the other to make this conference a reality. Also, may I sincerely thank our gracious chief host, His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Rivers State, who is here ably represented, for the warm hospitality of the state to this international audience. It is hoped that our distinguished guests will make out time to release the wonderful delight of this great and dynamic city of Port Harcourt, the Garden City. On this note, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, and participants, I wish us a successful deliberation, and once again, you are welcome to this all-important conference. Thank you, God bless, and onwards together.
This community is around the almost in the chief in Africa, and every by all the finished. It is I think one of the which is moving the five practice the representation of our community and is involving the community. Finance informed by state bodies that this Nigerian immigration is concerning with the city of national creating Nigerian in society. This is particularly very important achievement to be most upon finally made achievements are quite our people in the safe and secure environment in American peace around the world of the smoothly that most especially environment often
to observe all other protocols. I would like to first of all express the appreciation of the Institute for Security Studies for the opportunity to be part of this important and timely event, which marks the 66th anniversary of the Nigerian Navy, as well as this year's Nigerian Navy International Maritime Conference. The ISS is a Pan-African think tank working on various dimensions of Africa's peace and security issues in support of national, regional, and continental efforts. For us at the ISS, the importance of this year's event is not just in terms of the opportunity it offers to celebrate the great work of the Nigerian Navy, but also the platform this event offers for us to robustly discuss and engage on the timely theme of the event, which is optimizing collaboration for maritime security and socio-economic development in Africa. Excellencies and distinguished guests, of the many aspects of the theme which ought to be discussed in our many deliberations, there are two dimensions which are particularly noteworthy. First is the need to appreciate the extent of the challenge at hand when it comes to matters of Africa's maritime security issues and their wide-reaching drawbacks on achieving the vision of the Africa we want. For a long time, despite being surrounded by water in all dimensions and directions and having an expansive coastline, policies on the continent have treated Africa's territorial waters as if it does not exist. The biggest evidence of this is perhaps the African peace and security architecture, which was crafted without the inclusion of a maritime component. It is also clear from the relatively low levels of investments in maritime institutions and capabilities by African states. This obvious neglect of Africa's maritime domain costs Africa millions, if not billions, of lost revenue per year due to illegal fishing activities, high shipping insurance premiums, and a generally underexploited blue economy. This is certainly revenue that could have and can help reduce the poverty situation on the continent and make Africa a better place for its people, especially the young people. Africa's inability to manage its maritime space has also resulted in uncertainty in its waters and created a yawning gap exploited by various external naval operations. External naval presence, though may aim primarily to contribute to managing the situation in Africa's maritime domain, ultimately expand foreign presence and is an avenue for widening external influence on the continent. This has obvious dire consequences on the sovereignty of states and perceptions within the international community about Africa's capacity to manage its own affairs. Distinguished guests, as Africa embarks on the quest to operationalize the continental free trade area, there is no way it can neglect having to address its maritime challenges. Currently, over 90% of Africa's import and export trade are by sea. This implies that Africa's maritime stability is central to improvements in continental trade, and therefore, until the continent's maritime space is properly policed, the dream of a continental free trade area will be hampered. The second dimension which our deliberation ought to reflect on is the centrality of collaboration in any attempt to address Africa's maritime challenges. This is basically because Africa's maritime threats are complex and transnational in nature. Within such contexts, collaborations are not only indispensable, it plays the role of a multiplier effect on efforts. We believe that if collaboration can be enhanced in the management of challenges, the output of the collective will be bigger and better than the biggest outcome of any single actor, whether big or small. It is against this backdrop that the African Union called on member states in Communique 1012 of 2021 to collaborate through existing regional mechanisms and communities towards the establishment of an African Maritime Task Force to promote cooperation in addressing Africa's maritime challenges. The ISS finds the AU's call and the strategic focus of this event as an alignment of the right conditions. It is therefore an opportune time to discuss how to take forward the idea of collaboration through the operationalization of the AU's call for regional task forces. Between today and tomorrow, therefore, we are collaborating to facilitate discussions on how to take forward the idea of regional task forces on the continent. The ISS is appreciative of this collaboration with the Nigerian Navy and wishes participants successful deliberations. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies.
It is said that the reward for hard work is more work. And the African Union Peace and Security Council haven't seen how well we've been able to eradicate piracy in the Gulf of Guinea. It's calling on the Nigerian Navy and leveraging this conference to ensure that indeed the entire African waters is rid of maritime crimes. A round of applause for the representative of the AU and the Institute of Security Studies, Mr. Paul Simon, I guess. Please, a round of applause for him, please. It is now time for the keynote address by the special guest of honor for today's event. Without further ado, it is my singular honor and privilege to most respectfully request the Chief of the Naval Staff to invite our special guest of honor, Mr. President, ably represented by the Honorable Minister of Defense, Major General Bashir Magashi, to the lectern to deliver the keynote address. The Chief of the Naval Staff, sir.
While we await the arrival of the special guest of honor at this occasion, the Chief of Naval Staff has already laid the foundation for the program. That is, the essence of this security meeting is to gather all the Nigerian Navy allies across the Gulf of Guinea.
General Rabo, the Chief Host, Vice Admiral Awal Zubairu Gambo, the Chief of Naval Staff, Admiral Medal, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General F. Yahaya, the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal I.O. Amao, the representative of the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Ebuka Friday, heads of navies here present or represented, former Chief of Defense Staff, former Chief of Naval Staff, and icons of Nigerian Navy here present, the National President, Naval Officers Wife Association, Hajia Nana Aisha Gambo, Principal Officers from Defense and Service Headquarters here present, General Officer Commanding, Flag Officers Commanding, and Air Officers Commanding, Commandants and Commanders of Tri-Service Institutions, Military Formation and Autonomous Unit here present, members of the Diplomatic Corps, senior military officers, members of Naval Officers Wife Association, resource persons and delegates, heads of paramilitary and security agencies here present, captains of industry and corporate friends of the Nigerian Navy, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I am here to deliver a keynote address by the special guest of honor, His Excellency Muhammad Buhari, President Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, on the occasion of the opening ceremony of the International Maritime Conference held at Oni, Port, Multipurpose Conference Auditorium Entrance Camp, Oni, River State, on this day, 30th May 2022. I read, I am indeed delighted to be in your midst today to speak on the auspicious occasion of the 2022 International Maritime Conference in commemoration of the 63rd anniversary of the Nigerian Navy. I therefore identify with the Nigerian Navy and most prudently facilitate with the leadership, officers and rating, and civilian staff. I must say that I am exceedingly glad for this unique opportunity for meeting such a large gathering of distinguished dignitaries from far and near. As I glance through the audience, it is pleasing to note that the impressive caliber and connected to the undying interest of the much desired collaborative commitment towards finding solution to the myriad of marine security challenges in the Gulf of Guinea and Africa's maritime environment. And therefore sincerely join the Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral A.Z. Agambo, to welcome you all to this auspicious conference. It is gladdening to note that since the inception of the Nigerian Navy has transformed to a formidable force imbibe realities of our national imperatives and beyond, interrogating contendable variables and apply only the most optimal policy strategies to resolve maritime challenges in our exclusive economic zone up to the Gulf of Guinea. I believe this important conference is yet another platform to gather experts to discuss and fashioning out the best way forward in ensuring collaboration and collective maritime security architecture to eliminate maritime crime in our collective maritime environment. To this end, we all have strong reason to support the Nigerian Navy, and I make bold to commend the Nigerian Navy for its giant stride in maritime security operations, which resulted in several arrests of economic saboteurs, perpetrators of illegal bunkering, smugglers, pipeline vandals, and other miscreants in the fight against illegalities in the Gulf of Guinea maritime domain. The effort further resulted in significant decline in piracy and ultimately the listing of Nigeria from the International Maritime Bureau piracy list in March 2022. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Nigerian Navy is the cardinal agency in the marine sector that has the responsibility to lead the national response and prosecution of maritime threats. However, you will agree that these threats have become a transnational and have evolved beyond the scope and capability of one nation to deal with. The situation therefore calls for greater international collaboration, and this conference therefore symbolizes strategic collaborative initiative between Nigerian Navy and other international maritime stakeholders. It also presents potent strategy to explore the measures to mitigate the increasing vulnerabilities in African waters, especially in the Gulf of Guinea. This region, we all know, is very rich and endowed in living and non-living resources, and therefore the economic opportunities therein, as well as its strategic importance, cannot be overemphasized. These prospects are, however, threatened by the common challenge of rising insecurity and myriad of maritime crimes that retard the development efforts of the Gulf of Guinea states. It is therefore apt to persist that any collaborative initiative by the Nigerian Navy to build partnership across the Gulf of Guinea navies, as well as Coast Guard, is in the right direction to optimize credible capacity that will guarantee our collective maritime defense for the Gulf of Guinea. It is on this note that this International Maritime Conference, with the theme Optimizing Collaboration for Maritime Security and Social Economic Development in Africa, is considered apt and timely. The theme is well thought out to examine the nexus between sustainable socio-economic development and the collaboration facets that will guarantee a safe and secure maritime domain. Its focus is essentially on collaborative engagement on the centrality of effective maritime security. There is a sense of expectation from this conference to realign ideas on the imperatives of curbing maritime threats in the region and the reappraisal of multinational approach to problem solving. It is therefore envisaged that this conference will provide enduring solutions to better police Africa's maritime space. Let me affirm that this event comes at a critical period when the country faces downturn revenue and multifaceted security challenges. The moment therefore calls for prudent resource management, innovativeness, accountability, and deep reflection that will endanger patriotic service rededication. I am, however, glad to reiterate that, notwithstanding the downturn, the present administration is very determined to ensure that the Nigerian Navy is well supported to achieve its statutory responsibilities. We shall also support the regional and international collaboration as well as partnership efforts of the Nigerian Navy towards securing the Gulf of Guinea for economic development to strive. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, let me once again acknowledge and appreciate distinguished personalities present here this morning. You are most welcome. Please find time to appreciate and enjoy the colorful sights and sounds, as well as the rich cultural heritage of our dear country. On this note, it is my singular honor and pleasure to declare the 2022 International Maritime Conference open. I therefore wish you a fruitful deliberations. Long live the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you all for your attention.
Now, he is by Section 1, Mr. President, stated by Honorable Major General Bashir Magashi. Please, a round of applause for the Special Guest of Honor. I've been reliably informed that the Executive Secretary of the Gulf of Guinea Commission, Ambassador Adenike Okonga, is here in our midst. It's a pleasure to have you in our midst. You're welcome. Please, a round of applause for Ambassador Adenike Okonga. I've also made aware that the Executive Director, Zenith Bank, Mr. Dennis Olisa, is here in our midst. We're indeed delighted to have you in our midst. Any moment from now, we'll be departing the hall for the group photograph. But before we depart the hall, permit me to make the following announcements. Immediately after the group photograph, our chief host, the Chief of the Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Awa Gambo, would lead other very distinguished invited guests and indeed our resource persons and delegates to the exhibition hall, where we'll take a walk around. Immediately afterwards, we will then proceed for a lunch break before we reconvene for the first session for today. These deliberations for the first session, we go as follows. We would have a presentation by the guest speaker. Thereafter, we would have expert positions by the Economic Committee of West African States, the ECAS position, the African Union position, and the Gulf of Guinea Commission position. Thereafter, we would have our moderator lead a discussion panel. We'd also have opportunities for members of the audience to make interventions. But let me at this juncture make some clarifications, particularly as regards interventions from the floor, that owing to time and all the things that we have slated for today's event, we'll keep it short. We would not require you to make any protocol, just stand on the existing protocol, and we'll be very, very strict on time so that we're able to do all that we have slated for today. Thereafter, we'll have a breakout session, which will be led by two very erudite resource persons, which will also further deliberate on the topic, which is building international collaborative capacities for sustainable maritime security in the Gulf of Guinea. So at the panel discussions, the breakout sessions, you have the opportunities to further make your points. And of course, if there are any submissions, you can also have it written. Our rapporteurs are on hand to include it in the final communique, which will be ready by tomorrow. The group photograph will be in this manner. The special guest of honor with our chief host, the chief of defense staff, other service chiefs, and all heads of navies and their representative who have the first group photograph. Thereafter, we'll have the special guest of honor, our chief host, the chief of the naval staff, all past chief of defense staff and chief of naval staff here present will join in that photograph. The third session would have the special guest of honor, and we want to crave indulgence of the special guest of honor, sir. Because I'm seeing in all the order of group photographs, would have special guest of honor on all the list. And all retired senior officers. Thereafter, would have all our distinguished delegates and resource persons to also join the special guest of honor and our chief host in a group photograph. And finally, members of 36 regular course, the chief of the naval staff, and our special guest of honor. Before the director of information would be outside at the photograph stand and would midwife these particular sessions. Our ushers are on hand, our directors accordingly. While that is going on, I crave the indulgence of other delegates and our delegates from around the world, naval officers, to please remain in the foyer or in the hall while we await lunch break immediately after the exhibition. I'll just take that again. We would have the group photograph. Our chief host will lead us to the exhibition stand. Then we'd have a 1 hour lunch break. Then we reconvene for the session. Before that, we just want to show a video. Ali, video on the Navy before we then go for the group photograph to allow our ushers to get the stand ready. That was a short video. We have several of short videos like that to acquaint our audience with some of the work that we're doing in the Nigerian Navy and some of the successes that we've achieved in ensuring that the maritime domain is rid of maritime crimes. It's at this juncture that I most respectfully request the Chief of the Naval Staff to please lead the special guest of honor and indeed other distinguished invited guests, the Chief of Defense Staff, other service chiefs, to the photograph stand for the group photograph. The Chief of Naval Staff. Band.
In the last 66 years of the establishment of the Nigerian Navy, the Nigerian Navy has remained a leading naval authority in the African continent and within the Gulf of Guinea region. Its landmark achievements have remained a source of pride not only to the Nigerian authorities but to the regional collaborators and partners alike. Today's engagement is an effort targeted at building synergy and enhancing security
The
for
responsibility
all
of hydrography in Nigeria
maritime
is
stakeholders
particularly invested
within
on
the
the
region.
Nigerian Navy. The Nigerian Navy has not left any stone unturned to provide hydrographic products and services
The Nigerian
in
Navy
defense and
over the
civil
years
needs. The Nigerian Navy
have made
has engaged
strategic
in several hydrographic
efforts
studies and tidal
intended
observation,
to contain the
particularly
activities
around
of
sensitive
criminal
operational
elements
areas
within the
to
region.
aid operations and support maritime trade in Nigeria.
And of course,
The Nigerian Navy
as
has
noted
developed
by
a
the special
national
guest of
scheme
honor at this
charting of
occasion,
Nigeria's maritime
the Nigerian
environment,
Navy
leading to the production
efforts
of
have
diverse
no doubt helped significantly at reducing the negative impact of piracy in the Gulf of Guinea.
offshore waters.
With integrated
200 years
efforts
after
like this,
relying on the
it is
United
expected
Navigational Chart,
that this regional collaboration would help the Nigerian Navy
routine induction of hydrographic
to
ship
sustain
in
its
this land
capacity
and the acquisition of survey
and
boats
dominance
associated equipment.
at the Gulf of
Nigerian
Guinea.
Navy's hydrographic
From its remarkable impact at containing the activities of criminal elements who are sabotaging the